This call may be recorded or transcribed.
Yeah. She switched with Vivian tomorrow. EJ is covering her. What time is it? What time is it? Collins? Who wants you to? Let me get you document. This is your case number, you need? I'll give you the case. Where did you sign it? So it's a shipwreck case, I thought. The window. I'm doing a copy number of this R. Yeah. Oh. Okay, so wishing it. Then start working on the arraignments for today too. The criminal summons for today. No, both of you are.
Hello? We're all still waiting.
This is Nanette with OMB calling in.
This is Vanessa from Shinley District.
Okay, is that only two people here?
I hear some wrestling in the background, so I'm not sure.
Dan from AOC.
I'm here. This is Gina from Alamo, Chile.
Delegate James on the line.
This is Linda with Financial Tech Judicial Branch.
Well, how come the microphones are not on? Hello? Is there anybody on the line? Are there any delegates on the line?
Delegate James on the line.
All right, Delegate James, good morning. Thank you for being on the line. We have Chief Justice who is in the chambers with us, Lorraine, Mr. Stephen Atsidy, and Ms. Gorman. We are waiting for one more delegate to get on, so we have a quorum, and then we can go ahead and we can begin.
Should sit order.
Oh, Mr. Silva. Great. Now that we have a quorum, we'll go ahead and start. This is the Law and Order Committee of the 24th Navajo Nation Council Oversight Budget Hearing for fiscal year 2021. Today is August 24th, 2020. It is now 9:19. Presiding, well, let me just go ahead and have Lorraine, Miss Lorraine, we're going to go ahead and call the budget meeting to order at 9:19. We're going to go ahead and do roll call. Can you go ahead and assist us with that, Lorraine?
Can you hear me? Hello?
But now. Hello. Roll call for LLC, Eugenia Charles Newton. Adam Soul. Eugene Soul.
Here.
Edmund Yazzie. Edmund Yazzie. There's 3 members present, Madam Chair.
Lorraine, we didn't hear you.
3 members present.
With that, committee members, we do have a quorum. We are now at invocation. Chief Justice, can you go ahead and lead us in invocation this morning? You can go ahead and talk into my phone. The Chief Justice is going to call in. She is here in the chambers with us this morning. We have enough social distancing, so it's working out great.
Can you hear me? Okay, she. What's that? DA Tadini. Yitrandini. DJ Yashin Kwa. Deepesh Beni, the Natchin, she Benina Kwa, Honey Kwa. She had the Bishop was Yahiki and she didn't never. Machine General, she that didn't. Hala the day so you should a doctor. A coho DA. Judicial branch was Yahiki the Bishop she qua. She staff a day log or she will be presenting it to the Law and Order Committee. She had the opportunity will Yahiki qua Ebony na qua ni kai. Although thank you very much, Heavenly Father, our Creator, that we are gathered here so that we can present the budget, the 2021 budget, to our Law and Order Committee, who is our Oversight Committee. And we do this with thanks, with blessings that we have been given to represent all of the judicial branch so that we can provide services to the people who need to use our services. And we pray at this time that we may be able to present the budget and that we may be able to have the wisdom and the peacefulness to give this. And we are praying at this time also for all our leaders and all of the people that we work for and all of our families, our relatives who are out there listening, and also who are right now with their families, or they may be working elsewhere and they might be on the land. We pray for blessings during this time. We pray that all of us will be safe and all of our people will be safe. And we pray for a special blessing at this time for all the families and for all our neighbors and all those that have been affected by this pandemic. And we pray this time for health. We pray this time for peace. We also pray for blessings and guidance during these trying times. With that, we're very, very grateful for what we have. And we say these names, this prayer in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Ashahat, Chief Justice Jane, for that invocation. We are now moving down to item number 2 on the agenda, introduction, recognizing guests and visiting officials. Again, I am here at the council chambers along with Chief Justice Jane, Stephen Epsity, and we also have Ms. Gorman, who's also present with us, and Honorable Otto So, who just walked into the chambers. We are practicing social distancing. We all have our masks on, and we are all sitting behind plexiglass here at the chambers. Do we have any other delegates or anybody else who's on the line?
Madam Chair, Ron Havers from Legislative Council. I'm on the call.
Good morning, Mr. Haven. Thank you for being on the call. At this time, we'll move down to item number 3 on the agenda, review and adopt the budget hearing agenda. I do need a motion for this. Committee members?
Eugene So.
Motion made by Honorable Eugene So. Can I get a second? Second made by Honorable Otto So. Okay, if there's no other questions, comments, or amendments that have to be made to the agenda, I will go ahead and proceed forward to the vote. Honorable Vince James, how do you vote? Honorable Eugene So, how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable So votes green. Honorable Otto So, how do you vote? Honorable So votes green. Honorable Edmund Yazzie, how do you vote? Honorable Vince James, how do you vote? Honorable Edmund Yazzie, how do you vote? With that, committee members, we do have 2 in favor, 0 opposed, 3 of them who are not voting, 1 is the chair. So this agenda hereby passes. We'll proceed on to item number 4 on the agenda, review and adopt the hearing, rules, and oath. I believe, Ms. Spencer, can you verify? But I believe that the oath is not required. Is that correct? Mr. Haven?
Madam Chair, I have a copy of the guidelines, and the oath is not provided for in the rules.
So just for clarification, the Chief Justice is not required to take an oath this morning?
No, not under the guidelines provided. There is no reference to the oath requirement.
Thank you, Mr. Haven, and just for clarification, I will be asking you this question for each of the departments and divisions that come before the Law and Order Committee. So we have it on the record that the oath is not required for the budget hearing fiscal year 2021. With that, committee members, we'll go ahead and move down to item number 5, presentation by the Office of Management and Budget. We have OMB on the line. Office of Management and Budget, second call. Is anybody present or on the line?
Good morning. This is Nanette Francisco, Senior Budget Analyst with OMB.
Ms. Francisco,
Hello?
thank you for being on the line.
Okay,
Ms.
I'm ready to.
Francisco,
Yes.
go ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay, I electronically file the report to you. It's 10 pages. We have the Nomination Law and Order Committee Fiscal Year 2021 budget hearing for judicial branch. And then if you go to the next page, you have the table of contents. There's 5 items, A, B, C, D, E, for judicial branch. The condition of appropriation and legislative concerns, there's none for judicial. So we're only going to go over the 4, A, B, C, and D. Going on to the next page, you have your A, which is your fiscal year 2021 fund type budget summary. Okay, going on to the next page, you have the report there. You have your business units listed, program title, your FY 2020 approved budget, and then your information for FY 2021 follows that. So I'll be reading the bottom line total. For FY 2020 approved budget, the amount is $14,924,653. The next column is your proposed general fund budget for FY 2021. The bottom line total is $16,624,653. Your next column is indirect costs, $130,107. Proprietary 0, fiduciary 0, special revenue 0. Special revenue external is $5,518,864. The next column is your overall total. The overall total is $22,273,624. Going on to the next page, it's B. Item B, you have your FY 2020 budget status report. This is for the 3rd quarter. Going on to the next page is the report. And again, this is for the 3rd quarter. And again, you have your business unit, your program title, original budget, revised, actual, encumbrance, budget available, and expenditure of totals. I'll read the bottom line total. The original budget is $15,074,757. Your revised budget is $15,292,395. Your actuals, $9,316,801.83. Your encumbrance, $52,549.84. Your budget available is $5,923,043.33. Your percent expended is 61.27. The next page is going to be handled by Janet McCabe. He should be on the line. Good morning, members of the Law and Committee Order. This is Janet McCabe. I'll be reading the FY20 Program Performance Assessment Report. There are 18 business units within the judicial branch, and I will be reading the bottom average scores for the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd quarter. 1st quarter is 2.37. 2nd quarter is 2.23. 3rd quarter is 1.99. Moving on to the Plan of Operations Status Report. Again, there are 18 business units. All programs are in compliance with their Plan of Operation. And there are no condition of appropriations and legislative concerns for this, for the judicial branch. This concludes the OMB report. Members of the committee and Mr. Chair, thank you.
So the OMB report is completed at this time. Committee members, are there any questions for OMB? Okay, if there are no
Madam Chair,
questions,
Eugene Soap.
Honorable Eugene Sok, go ahead.
I'm almost there, and I would like to look at some of the paperwork that you guys have there. Right now, right now I don't have any question, but I wish I could look at the paperwork too. But I'll be there. No question.
OMB, if you could just stay on the line in case we have any questions, we would appreciate it. So the presentation by the Office of Management and Budget has been completed. We'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the fiscal year 2021 budget review and presentation given by the Judicial Branch. The presenter is the Honorable Chief Justice Joanne Jay. With that, Chief Justice, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Shaya Joanne Kapahan Smith on the machine. Other area toilet in the chair, other Kapahan, good morning, members of the Law and Order Committee. Good morning. Good morning, staff, and all of the individuals that are on the call with us this morning. We are presenting on behalf of the Judicial Branch the budgets that staff put together. Staff from all 18 districts put together the budget pretty early back in February, and then thereafter the COVID hit. So it was a blessing that we got it in as soon as we could. And so the process is that today I will be here and Stephen Edsity will be here, and then Yvonne Gorman is here to answer any questions. Each unit is prepared to give their specific allocation, and I believe that it's read into the record. So just wanted to say at this time is that the Judicial Branch is very grateful for the allocation that we have obtained for 2021. The history for the Judicial Branch has been that through the many, many years in the past, there has been a decrease in various years, and therefore what happened was that it affected personnel, and then it also affected some of the functions. And so the Judicial Branch is really grateful at this time that we've been able to slowly but surely move in a direction whereby we can have all of the necessary staff that we can have. Right now, we don't have all the staff that our branch believes that we should have in order to get all of our services done for our Diné people. So at this time, members of the Law and Order Committee, Madam Chair, we are prepared to present our budget, and it is hoped that this budget will be recommended on behalf of the Judicial Branch, and we are also prepared for any questions. At this point, we have in our proposed budget $16,624,653. And so, thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that presentation, Chief Justice. Committee members, are there any questions for the Chief Justice at this time? Committee members, just to be clear, the Chief Justice has provided us an amendment to Exhibit A. Chief Justice, would you like to explain the reason for this amendment?
Certainly, Madam Chair, members of the committee and staff, we are, as we all know, the instructions in the BIM instructions call for calculating personnel at 2,088 hours. And the legislation that went in reflected 2,080 hours per personnel, per person. And so at this time, what we did is, because we had to make those changes of that one day, that we are requesting at this time to modify or to have the LLC make the amendment so that it will reflect the 2,088 hours. And those calculations were corrected, and they were made in conformance now with the BIM. And so that what the legislation reflects and also what the numbers reflect is that just a minute here. So the number is,
Chief Justice, just so you know, you can have up to 2 agents who can assist you with answering questions. I know that we have Mr. Ed City and Ms. Gorman here, so if you'd like to call upon them, they can help assist you with answering these questions. Thank you.
I do have, I was looking for the number, the difference that it made from one area to another. I think it was 54,000. Yeah, $54,655. So that was a difference, Madam Chair, members of the committee. And that difference, because we go from 2,080 to 2,088, that was a difference of 54,000. What was? I will have Stephen repeat that number. But in any event, the number that we had, Madam Chair, is reflected, and therefore we need an amendment to reflect that. So it did not change the overall allocation that we have. What it did was it took out from the administrative offices of the court. And even within that line item, it would not significantly affect the operations and maintenance budget, Madam Chair.
So, Chief Justice, the 54,000 that you referenced, that is coming out, so it's still within your budget. So what you did was you just kind of did a transfer between the different, is it the breakdown of costs that you have within the judicial branch, or is it the overall administrative office cost?
I'll have Stephen answer that. He has the correct number. Thank you. Okay, Stephen.
Madam Chair? The AOC business unit. That's business unit 10202001. And then it was distributed across all of the other business personnel were needed. The only business that didn't receive extra personnel was the Judicial Conduct Commission, which doesn't have any personnel in its budget. So we took the $55,655 and then distribute it to all of the business units, including within the AOC business unit, because we were short on the 2,080 work hours for the year that we're required to budget for. And in doing this amendment, we need to read those numbers into the record because they're different from the legislation as it was dropped initially.
Before we read it into the record, I think what we need to do is we need to, and Honorable Otto, so if you, if I'm not correct, if you could assist me in this, but I think we need to do a motion to amend the legislation to remove the Exhibit A that was originally submitted with the original legislation and replace it with the Exhibit A that you provided to us today. Ms. Gorman?
Also, I'm sorry. Also, B and E needs to be changed out. Exhibits B and E.
A, B, C,
And
D, and E. Yes, so these are the fund type budget summary. Honorable Otto?
Yes, I guess this is a committee hearing, and this legislation here is to the Law and Order Committee, and this legislation amendment could happen at probably Friday. We just hold this amendment right now because, to my understanding, we're in a budget hearing right now. We're not in a Law and Order Committee meeting. So therefore, this amendment that's being to legislation 0183-20 is this could only happen at an official Law and Order Committee meeting. So therefore, we could note this, insert this here, and as long as the information that's provided reflects all the budget that is provided to us right now, and that's in this binder. So, but at a hearing, I don't think we can move to amend this, but we have to be in a meeting mode. So I believe at the end of the week, we will be having a Law and Order Committee meeting, and that's where the amendment will happen. As long as the amendment sheet that's provided again reflects all the programs information that's being provided here, reflects those sheets. If it's not reflecting those sheets, all those other program numbers, their program budgets are going to have to reflect the new information. So therefore, with this amendment right now, I think at a committee hearing, we can't hear this. We can hear the request, but we can't make the official change to the legislation because it will require an official action from the Law and Order Committee. And I believe we have that. We may have that scheduled Friday. Is that correct? The special Law and Order Committee meeting, Lorraine?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. The budget hearings are from today, Monday through Friday. But if you're done like by Thursday, we can send a memo to the Speaker's office and have a special meeting on Friday to do the legislation. But some of the legislations were kind of like put in like last week. I know the judicial branch resolution will. I think it's coming out of the 5-day comment today. So it will be best to gather all the legislations on Friday and approve those legislations. Madam Chair.
Thank you for that, Lorraine. Ron, is there anything that you'd like to add to this conversation, just so that we are properly guided in how to address this issue?
Madam Chair, I have Mariana Khan here with me as well. And essentially, you are going through your budget resolution, and suggestion was made by you to address Exhibit A, and essentially that's pretty much what my advice would be, is to do an amendment and have the exhibit switched out. So I will leave that to your discretion, and I have Mariana Khan on the line with me as well, but that's pretty much my advice on this one, Madam Chair.
Ms. Khan, do you agree with Mr. Haven's advice?
Madam Chair, the exhibit should be completely changed out, and it would require a motion and a second, like any other amendment to legislation, because we are now dealing with legislation. Even though this is the budget season, you are given a legislation to work with, 189-20, and it is ready for consideration, and you are acting on a legislation, and you treat it just like any other legislation that comes before you. All changes are done through amendment, first and second, and voted on majority vote. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Khan. Yes, Honorable Otto.
Since we have Ms. Khan on the line, so what I was looking out for was the amendment, the amendment being requested of changing out Exhibit A with the old to the new. This would only happen at a committee meeting, correct? Regular committee meeting or special committee meeting. That's all.
This, Madam Chair, this particular legislation was posted on the 17th, and the 5-day comment period is over on August 22nd. And the budgets are considered as legislation, and in that respect, the regular hearing rules apply with regard to quorum and acting on any amendments. Ms. Chair.
So what I am hearing is that because the 5-day comment period has been completed on August 22nd, and we are now on August 24th, the Exhibit A that was included in the legislation, we do have to do a motion and a second and do a vote to change out the exhibits to the new ones that have been provided to us today. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Ron Haven again. Yes, that's pretty much our advice from Legislative Counsel's office.
Okay, so with that, committee members, again, the legislation that was dropped, 0183-20, has gone through the 5-day comment period. The 5-day comment period ended on August 22nd. Within that legislation, there was an exhibit that was provided to us that was attached with the legislation. So what I need is I need a motion to replace the original Exhibit A, B, C, D, and E with the new exhibits that have been provided to us today on August 24th. So can I get a motion on this?
Point of privilege.
Honorable Otto.
we are changing the legislation that is in the hopper, what came through the 5-day comment period. And we're at a committee hearing. And I believe this change would happen at the Special Law and Order Committee meeting that's going to be called at on Friday, Thursday or Friday, whenever we're done. And back to our council, can we amend a legislation at a committee hearing? Because the authorities at the committee hearing and at the committee meetings are different. But if Ledge Council tells us we can do this at a committee hearing, this changed the whole rule of policy of legislation, and when we can hear legislation, meaning that we can, if Ledge Council allows this, we can hear legislation at any type of hearing, because whether it's a budget hearing or a hearing for a judge or any type of hearing, because this is the hearing setting, and I believe the rules are different. But if our Ledge Council is advising us to go ahead and do this, I don't think that this is we can't do this at a committee hearing. That's all I'm saying. If you can, maybe get another attorney to chime in on it. Through the budget hearings I sat in, we would just hear the budget information and all the changes. When all the changes happen to the exhibit, to the legislation, when it's all refined and everything, that's when the amendments happen at the Special Law and Order Committee meeting at the end of the budget hearings. So that is all I am saying. But if Ledge Council allows us to do this, I guess somewhere the law has changed, and I guess I was sleeping. But to my knowledge, we have not changed the committee rules or the public hearing rules, because this is a public hearing. This budget hearing. This is a form of public hearing, and that's just my pick on this. But if Ledge Council allows this, I guess we need some in writing from the Ledge Council that we, the Law and Order Committee, we are in order. That way, when somebody raises this question, we have somebody to point our fingers back to. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Haven, go ahead.
Yes. Thank you very much. In the memo that was released by Legislative Counsel's Office on August 19, 2020 by Kristen Lowell, you'll notice, and I hope this was circulated to you all. I'm assuming it has been, along with the guidelines. You'll notice under the second page of that memo, and there was a question on this earlier, and it had to do with the oath. And under that section, you'll notice how Ms. Lowell analyzes the hearings that Delegate Otto is referring to. And I do respect the process involved, and I do understand that. And you can go with the suggestion made by Otto. So I don't have a particular problem with that, and I think it's going to take a little bit of time. And insofar as your exhibits are lined up with judicial branch, and there was an amendment that was made, and I had assumed that it was only with respect to Exhibit A, and that document would have to be switched out. But I understand that all of it would have to be switched out. But I don't have a particular problem on how suggestion is made by Mr. Otto, insofar as waiting. to go through the hearings and make your decisions on Friday. There's nothing that prevents that under the guidelines you have. The only thing that Ms. Lowe has pointed out is that your process right now is different. Well, let me just read the provision here that she has under her guidance here. The oversight budget hearings involve council delegates acting in their capacity as legislators to approve legislation. The Navajo Nation Code authorizes commission to hold such hearings and have power to subpoena attendance testimony of witnesses, and that's at 185 subsection C. This authorization allows delegates to act in a quasi-judicial capacity. Under these circumstances, the committee would make a determination about an issue in controversy, and an oath would be administered prior to witness testimony. This oversight budget hearings are different. The committee members review and document the documents and obtain information from the divisions, department, and programs on the budget needs. Ultimately, the committee members are gathering information to make a determination on legislation before them. So there she explains this as a legislation that you have reviewed a number of times pursuant to your oversight authority, and that's how she treats this, just like any other legislation. And that was the context in which we provided our advice previously, insofar as permitting amendments to be made. But I will defer to the committee chair's decision on this one here. Under the guidance, basically these are just general rules from Rule 1 to Rule 9. However, if it's necessary, as indicated by Delegate So, certainly the Law and Order Committee can defer its final decision on this legislation up through Friday. So I don't have a particular problem with that, and Legislative Council, our office doesn't have a particular problem with that. So I appreciate it insofar as allowing me time to explain that particular aspect of your proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Haven. So it looks like we're in a little bit of a conundrum here, because we have gone through the 5-day comment period. Today is the first day of budget hearing, and we have been presented a new budget summary. My concern is if we don't acknowledge this exhibit, then we cannot discuss it on the record. And so that's where we're stuck, because as Honorable Otto So stated, we're not in an official committee meeting. This is a budget hearing. So I think the only thing that we can do at this point is acknowledge that the new exhibits have been provided to this committee, and that we can make the official motion to exchange out the exhibits. But again, Mr. Haven, as you stated, it is up to the chair to decide how to proceed forward. If we proceed forward without making an official motion to accept the exhibits that have been given to us today, is it open for discussion? I'm going back on mute, so if you could answer that question, Mr. Haven.
Madam Chair, again here, Mr. Haven here. I will. We need to defer to your discretion on this one here, because ultimately, this week you can make, as Mr. Alonso has indicated, it may be much easier for the committee to make amendments to this legislation and act on it Friday upon all your reports. You can do that, but I will defer to your discretion. There's nothing that prevents you ruling that it's permissible to discuss the amendment at this point, but I would recommend at least to have a second on the change that is going to be made, of course, and I will leave it to the discretion here. There's really no clear restriction against that under the rules that you currently have that has been provided to the LOC.
Madam Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Haven. Honorable Otto.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a motion to accept the judicial branch's recommended change to that certain exhibit to legislation 0183-20 that we here at the budget hearing recommend that the change will happen at the Special Law and Order Committee meeting that's going to take place either on the end of the budget hearing. And that way we have it on record in the budget hearing that this was brought to our attention, that this certain exhibit does not reflect what information had been provided. So from there, we can go ahead and I'll make that motion in the budget hearing that we do acknowledge their request. That way, at the regular special meeting, an official action will take place again to make sure that this validates that. And that way we have everything on record. But here it's just a recommending. And so that's just what my motion is going to be.
Okay, there's been a motion on the floor, and the motion is to recognize Exhibit A that was issued on August 24th, 2020 to this to the Law and Order Committee. Is that correct, Honorable Otto?
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Okay, with that, I will accept that motion. Can I get a second on this? Okay, so the motion is to recognize Exhibit A, B as in boy, and E that was issued on August 24th, 2020. The motion made by Honorable Otto. So can I get a second? Okay, this is the last and final call. Can I get a second?
Madam Chair, question.
Honorable Eugene So.
That agenda we approved this morning. I just wanted to know, I was walking when I turned off from the phone when I came in here. I missed part of what this definition was between the oversight budget hearing and a regular meeting. Is there a difference? That's what I wanted to. I was listening to when I walked in, but I turned it off when I was walking because I thought you guys are open mic out there. Thank you.
Honorable Eugene So, thank you for that question. And I'm going to go ahead and have Mr. Haven answer that question.
Madam Chair, I thank you again. I do have again Mrs. Khan here to help me out as well insofar as these advice that we're providing. Mr. Delegate Eugene So has a question on the differences between this hearing and also your regular meetings. That's the way I understood the question, and I think that the memorandum that was issued by your office did indicate that your exercise of authority now is in respect to your authority as legislators. So this is a resolution that I prepared for you and got through the 164 comment period. So essentially, it's before you now, and you have authority to act on it and determine your exhibit and what is to be included as you convene the hearing and conclude the hearing. I would simply advise you to include your exhibits through amendment and then approve your legislation accordingly. So I think that was the purpose of the memorandum that was issued in our office, is that this is treated as legislation that is something that the committee routinely reviews and approves, and that's the reason why the oath requirement was taken out of your guidelines for these type of proceedings with respect to budgets that are now recommended before the committee. So again, here, it's something that I think the committee can proceed with through amendments and as proposed by committee members. I don't have a particular problem with that. It would be certainly consistent with how legislation is considered by the committee, and to ensure that proper motions are made, to ensure that the votes are taken, and simply have you approve the proposed resolutions that I have prepared for you at the end of the presentations that are made. And as suggested by Mr. So, I think the preference of the committee is to have maybe perhaps on Friday to take up legislation again and to have the final action of the committee. And that's really up to the committee insofar as how it determines, insofar as how to proceed in that respect. So I will leave that to, again, to the committee members. So thank you very much.
Honorable Eugene So, does that answer your question?
It kind of, but I'm still kind of questioning that we are in a budget oversight budget hearing, FY 2021. That's our agenda. That's the reason why I asked if it's going to conflict somewhere along the way. That's just my question. And I don't. To me, I see it like it's a 5-day comment period. Don't really matter because of the wording, budget hearing, and a regular or special meeting. Even Margot, but I think the motion is that we can consider at that time. Because I need answer on this issue, so I'll second the motion.
Ms. Bobroff, are you on the line?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am, and I haven't been listening the full time, but I think with Delegate Stowe's question, I think that the difference is easily seen when you look at today's agenda, which is a setup for the budget, the initial budget presentation. You call it a budget hearing. If you will note, there is no legislation on the budget hearing agenda. You did not read a legislation into the record before you started hearing reports or the presentation from judicial.
which is absolutely fine. But it goes to the point of you cannot amend a legislation until it's actually read into the note, added to your agenda, read into the record, and then motioned upon. So right now you don't have a legislation in front of you, which is fine. What you are doing is you are hearing the reports from the various programs, branches, departments under your under LOC's oversight. You are going to during those discussions, you're going to keep. You can proceed either two ways, but you're going to keep a list of changes which you want to make to their presentation. Those changes will actually be amendments at your formal amendments at your actual meeting. I think you were talking about on Friday when you have the legislation in front of you. So really the difference between a hearing and your budget, we're going to call it your budget meeting. The difference for Law and Order Committee will be that the budget hearings, you don't have legislation in front of you, so it's more of a question and answer type scenario. It gives you the opportunity to compile all of the amendments you will wish to make when you actually have legislation, your budget legislation read into the record and in front of you to vote on. Madam Chair, I hope that is further explanation, and I believe I'm saying the same things that Mr. Haven and Don said, just in a different way. I hope that's helpful. Thank you.
That is very helpful for us, Dana. Thank you. So with that, committee members, Honorable Otto So and Honorable Eugene So, we heard the legal opinion that has been provided to us by our chief office or our chief legislative counsel. So with that, if you are okay, Honorable Eugene So and Honorable Otto So, we don't need to do a motion to recognize Exhibit A that was issued to us today. Since it's just a Q&A, I think we'll be okay with asking questions about the new exhibits that have been provided to us, if you are both okay with that.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, Honorable Otto, so go ahead.
We could recommend that we just accept this and do the official change out at the special meeting when we're in order with the regular meeting. Because just flipping through the new Exhibit A, I mean, looking at Exhibit A and flipping through the like administrative courts, I just want to make sure that all these numbers reflect the same number that's being requested, because we want to make sure that each program, like for instance, Chin Lee Judicial is requesting 1,134,707. So those numbers reflect each other's under the proposed general fund. And I just want to make sure that to what I understand is that this new exhibit sheet reflects all the districts from administration of courts all the way down to the Judicial Conduct Commission, from business unit 10/2001 all the way down to 10/2019 business units. They all reflect this. That's the way I understand it. And therefore, this to recommend that this exhibit will be changed out at the regular budget hearing in on Friday or whenever this budget hearing ends. and that way we can do this change out there. And then with that, I believe, I guess as this request came from the first, we don't need to go through all these budget sheets that are in here then. You know, usually this would come at the end after we go through all the individual pages of, say, like we're going to go through Chinle Judicial Branch. Where are they putting their money? As we go through this new exhibit sheet that they brought in is going to change. But right now, as we recommend to accept this verbally, we're saying right now the committee is okay with how the court is allocating their monies at the district. For instance, let me go pick on Crown Point District. There's money in supplies. There's money in communication. So all these questions that we were supposed to ask, for communication, what are you going to utilize that for? Right now, by accepting this exhibit that's saying that we don't need to go through the whole budget here. So I'm ready to move on this, and the judicial branch says this is how they're going to use their dollars. Let's go and accept it and move on. Let's bring it on to the next individual, the next group that's going to come before us. And I guess we're done with the judicial branch portion, because they're saying that their money is all allocated, and I do respect that, because the 3-branch chiefs agreement that happened is not something by law. That's just something that had been just brought on. There's nothing in the code that says that 3-branch agreement will happen and that will determine the budget. So if the judicial branch says we're okay with this piece of pie that we got, $19,923 and $325, I'm okay with it. Let's accept their budget and let's move forward, move on. That way we're done with the judicial branch, and we just do the change at the committee meeting. So that's going to be my motion here, to move to accept that, and let's move on. Thank you.
So with that, committee members, are there any other questions?
I know what you're saying, Where?
Delegate James.
Honorable James, go ahead.
There's this one and this is Gurley.
This question is going to probably go to legal. If we make this motion and we vote on it, can we make this legislation at our LOC meeting?
Wait. Either that or this one.
Honorable James, can you hold on? Whoever is talking, please put your phone on mute. Go ahead, Honorable James.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's another. In regards to this amendment being made and us voting on it at a hearing, are we able to make it a consent agenda for this legislation? That way, when it comes to LOC's special meeting, we don't have questions and we don't start making changes there again. I think if we come to a conclusion here at a hearing, then we shouldn't even discuss it at an LOC meeting again. So wanted to ask that question, if we can make it in a consent agenda if possible. If it is possible, motioning party, I would like to ask you to include that in your motion. Thank you.
Honorable James, there is no motion on the floor. I believe that Honorable Otto So did make a motion and we were going to proceed forward, but as Dana indicated, that we did not read the legislation into record, so there's no need to amend anything. So the purpose of today's budget hearing is the Q&A. If we approve the budget today as is, then we are adjourned, or we are going to go into a recess today and we come back tomorrow for Department of Public Safety. Is my understanding. Is that correct, Lorraine? Lorraine's nodding her head over there, yes, but let me get her on the record.
Policy members, for today's 24th is judicial branch, and then tomorrow is Division of Public Safety.
Lorraine, we can't hear you.
Hello? Okay, today on the agenda, you can see today is judicial branch, and then tomorrow is Division of Public Safety for the 24th and the 25th. Madam Chair.
Thank you for that, Ms. Spencer. And Shanella, so really the purpose of today's hearing is to ask questions with the information that has been provided to us today by the judicial branch. Does that answer your question, Shanella?
Okay.
Since we're not really in an official committee meeting, I do have some questions regarding your budget, Chief Justice. My first question is, you do have information provided to us on a breakdown for your general budget costs. For clarification, can you tell us how much do you receive in your K account? And when we're talking about K accounts, we're talking specifically about the grant. How much grant money do you receive? And how much grant money, I know that we ran into an issue pertaining to the overspending that was done about 5 or 6 years ago. And as a result, the judicial branch did lose out on some grant money. Can you please provide us some information on that, and specifically, again, how much you receive in your K account? Chief Justice, thank you.
Okay, Madam Chair, thank you for the question. What I will do at this time is refer this question to Mr. Etcity, who has the details of those questions. Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Madam Chair.
Mr. Etcity, before I call on you, somebody has their music on. Can you please put your phone on mute? Lorraine, can you get a staff member in here to monitor the calls and put all people on mute so that we don't have these types of interruptions? Mr. Etcity, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Samantha, if you look in your packet, I'm going to be referring to information from tab 11, which is the administrative offices of the court budget sheets. If you look at the total amount for the administrative offices of the courts, it includes, I believe, 11 K accounts. But six of them are U.S. DOJ grants, and 5 of them are BIA 638 contract funds. So our total amount of all of the federal money that we receive, either from U.S. DOJ or from the Department of Interior, BIA, it comes to a total of about $3,168,565. And you were referring to the issue that we discussed last year regarding some issues due to the U.S. Department of Justice putting a hold on some of these K accounts. That situation is still ongoing. We still have limited access to our U.S. DOJ grants, but we have full access to our BIA 638 funds. So we are spending down the BIA funds, and the spending levels on the U.S. DOJ grants are reduced because we have limited ability to draw down those funds because of the hold that is still on Navajo Nation for these DOJ grants. We're still working through the process. It's all under the umbrella of something called a Corrective Action Plan, which binds us with Division of Public Safety, Department of Corrections. And if you look in tab 11, not only on the summary page at the very beginning is a listing, but if you go back towards the end, starting on page 8 of 18, you'll see an individual page summarizing each of the K accounts. So if you look at, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble getting to 8 of 18. Here we go. Yeah, from this point on, page 8 of 18, all the way through 18 of 18, you will see each of the K accounts that are active that we are working under. And those summary sheets total up to, as I said earlier, $3,168,565. The very last K account explanation sheet is what we usually put in to reflect an anticipated receipt or an anticipated award for the next calendar year from BIA. And this has not been assigned to a K account, but because we're under this 5-year contract, calendar year 21 will be the 5th year of our 5-year contract, and we anticipate an award coming from BIA, and we put this dollar amount in here to reflect some of the initial amounts of money that we'll be receiving. So that's why that in one particular K account, if you look in the upper right-hand corner, has 2 X's at the very end. It's not a complete, fully assigned account number because we haven't received that award yet. But we put it in the packet to let you know that we do anticipate another year of funding coming from the BIA under our current tribal courts 638 contract. All of the previous sheets are active K accounts where you can check on FMIS and you'll see the same numbers that we see in terms of the status of funds expended and the balance remaining. Some of these grants are annual grants, and some of these grants are multi-year grants. So all of the grants that you see in these K accounts contained in our budget are currently active and will be continuing on until September 30th, 2021. That concludes my answers, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that information, Mr. Red-City. So you mentioned that there was a little over $3 million in your K account, but page 1 of 18 indicates that you received $5,487,121 from grants and also from the federal government. Where is the $3 million that you're indicating?
I apologize, Madam Chair. I was reading I was reading from the revised Exhibit A that we submitted this morning to you. The amount that was reflected on our original Exhibit A does show a higher dollar amount. Those were some of the corrections that we made. We wanted to make sure that the dollar amounts that are reflected are correct. And we had some consultation with our partners at OMB to make sure that all of the dollar amounts are correct. So that is one of the reasons also why we're asking for the new exhibit to be recognized.
Thank you for that, Mr. Rhapsody. So just to be clear, the original budget summary provided that you referenced on tab 11 of the binder that we received, the amount indicated on that was $5,487,121. However, with the new amendments that you provided to this body today, the special revenue fund, or the K account, is actually $3,168,565. Is that correct?
Okay. The total amount that shows on our initial summary page on tab 1 includes all of the funds that I manage out of the administrative offices of the courts. So in addition to all the K accounts, which you correctly stated, $3,168,565, that is correct. But on the summary sheet, we also add in the general funds amount and the expected indirect cost recovery that we've been informed that we're going to be receiving. So on the summary sheet in tab 11, on the left-hand side, that total is $5,487,121. That includes the modified or the revised Exhibit A. So it includes the revised number for the AOC general funds, the $130,107 of indirect cost recovery. That was not changed. And then we revised some of the figures for the grants that we have to make sure that they reflect what's actually the current status with those levels of balance remaining. And that all is updated and revised, and it's correct.
Okay, so on tab 11, page 1 of 18, your general funds, at this point you have $2,188,449, which is 40% of your total. Is that the amount that is left over from the 2020 budget?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. That is what is reflected in the branch allocation for 2021. That's not having anything to do with the current budget year, 2020. That's what we will be proposing to operate for next fiscal year.
Thank you for clearing that up. Thank you. And then the other one regarding your indirect cost recovery, $130,107. Do you have a breakdown of that cost? And when we're talking about indirect cost recovery, can you explain to this body what what that means?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our indirect cost recovery, the figure is a reflection of guidance and the recommendation that we received from the Office of Management and Budget. And the way that the indirect cost is calculated is a pretty complex explanation. If I can just summarize it, maybe folks on OMB can correct me if I misstate anything, but it is really to cover or to help with the burden of administrative oversight of federal grants, federal external funds. As you know, the nation every year has to have a current indirect cost rate, and that rate is applied to all Navajo grants and agreements with the federal government and other governments. And the OMB, all programs and divisions
Mr. Absidy, you keep cutting out.
Okay, well, the OMB is the one that provides the calculation for the entire Navajo Nation on the total indirect cost recovery for every dollar of external sources or external funds that are received by the nation, applying the annual indirect cost recovery rate. And then once they calculate the distribution throughout the entire Navajo Nation government, they communicate that to each program. And so we received this information several weeks ago, and we put it in our budget as the number that we will use for the next year.
Honorable Otto Stowe.
Thank
There
you.
is I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I just wanted to mention that in tab 5, there's information about the indirect cost recovery for the nation as well. I believe it's in tab 5, maybe on page 2 or beginning on page 2. It shows what I just explained, the allocation of projected IDC recovery for the coming fiscal year 2021. It shows every business unit or every account. And you'll see on the first page of that list in number 14 and, number 15, it shows how we get that figure of 130,107. The judicial branch, as a recipient of federal funds or external funds, we get a share of the entire indirect cost recovery that the nation does claim. We get 0.58% of all of the federal dollars that are claimed as indirect costs. And that's how we get to that figure.
Thank you, Mr. Absidy. And the reason why I asked you that question is because if you look at the BIM manual that was just provided to us for 2021, on page 6, it does discuss the indirect cost recovery and allocation. And it states that the recovery and allocation of IDC, which is the indirect cost, is formula-based. And you are correct that on page 5, or I'm sorry, on tab 5 of the binder that you provided to us, it does give us a breakdown of all of the IDC allocations that have been made. What is a little bit alarming for me is that the judicial branch does receive 0.58% of the actual cost, but looking at some of the other programs, for instance, the legislative branch receives 4.77%, is my understanding. Office of Management and Budget receives 4.52%. The Office of the President and Vice President receives 4.26%. The Office of the Controller receives 10.67%. when we have the third branch of our government, the judicial branch, only receiving 0.58%. And if we're talking about a formula-based allocation, I guess I'm wondering if your branch took part in that discussion when it came time to come up with this formula-based allocation, or if this was just provided through OMB. Thank you. And then after that, I'll go ahead and proceed forward and recognize Honorable Otto So.
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. Since I've been here at the judicial branch from January 2017 forward, I have not been involved in any discussions regarding the indirect cost formula, but it's my general understanding that it reflects the level of grant activity. And so in every grant budget, whatever is claimed in IDC through each individual grant, that has a lot to determine in terms of what you are eligible to recover through the Navajo Nation's OMB formula. And so our total load of grants is generally driven by the number of DOJ grants that we have. Right now we have 6 on our books, and I would just submit that there are probably other offices that have smaller number of grants that they're managing, and other programs that may have larger numbers of grants. But this question is probably also needing to be addressed by OMB in terms of when the regular review of the formula itself occurs. But I have not been a part of any of those discussions recently. And if it's my general understanding is if we apply for more money and we help in the collection of indirect cost in each of those additional grants, that our share of the indirect cost recovery could go up. But right now, this is the level that we're receiving.
Thank you, Mr. Rhapsody, for that explanation. Honorable Otto So.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the reason why I'm just saying, let's just accept the budget. This is what they agreed to. And this is the piece of pie that they wanted. And that way, we know that every time judicial branch gets the least amount, and with the 3-branch chiefs agreement that was signed, it was signed by all 3 of the 3-branch chiefs, and they agreed to it, to say, hey, we're going to take this cut. And that date that happened was July 11th. So this happened before the budget hearings. So, we should just accept their budget. This is what they want. If they agreed to it, let's just approve what they got. If they come to council asking for more money, this is what we could say, hey, you agreed to this. Last year in the what's that? What I recommend is that we approve this budget, which the judicial branch agreed to. Let's see, 8.94% on July 11th. without informing the committee. That's one. The oversight. So therefore, I think we'll just tell them, okay, we're going to approve this, and let's not approve any carryovers because they agreed to this. And like I said, the three-branch cheese agreement is not codified in law to say that to determine the budget allocation for each branch. That's supposed to happen in a budget hearing, not through a three-branch cheese agreement. And to me, I think that's where it's at. And Honorable Key Allen Begay, and the last LOC, there was the same scenario. The previous acting chief justices would do the same thing. They would agree to it prior. And Honorable Key Allen Begay would bring this issue up. Since you already agreed to it, let's just approve it. And now that brings another concern. What is the real need at Chinle Court District? What is the real need at Crown Point? What is the real need in Window Rock Court District? What is the real need in Shiprock Court District? What is the real need in Tuba City, and so forth? All these programs. I thought I did bizarro and this is what you are constrained to that three-branch cheese agreement. Alcohol, even my recommendation is just to accept this the way it is, the way they accepted made their agreement, and move it forward with no carryovers. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Otto. So, committee members, are there any other questions at this time?
Good morning, Chair Charles Noon. This is Delegate Claudia. May I ask a question?
Honorable Claudia, welcome, and thank you for joining us this morning. Yes, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, committee members, staff, Judicial Branch, Chief Justice. Thank you for your budget. I would request if I can receive a copy of the proposed amendment. My question is regarding the probation service, and I'm looking at Exhibit E, so I'm not sure if the proposed amendment updates your unmet needs. That's my concern in not understanding what potentially is the unmet needs of the nation. I did sit on one or quite a few three-branch meetings regarding the needs of the judicial branch, and to my understanding, there's at least maybe 3.4, 3.5 unmet needs of the judicial branch. So I would, I think if that wasn't discussed, and I apologize, I didn't jump on the line till 10 o'clock, if I could get clarification, but more importantly, I'm looking at probation services and the unmet need of monitoring and making sure that individuals who are either on probation for crimes and convicted of crimes on Navajo Nation are being monitored, and what are the mechanisms that we can help with public education and making sure these individuals comply by their probation sentence. Thank you, committee members, and I'll go back on mute.
Chief Justice Jane, if you could respond to Honorable Claudia's question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Claudia, I will refer that question to Stephen at City. Thank you. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Otsedi?
Thank you, Chief Justice Jane, members of the Law and Order Committee, Chairman Jeannie Charles Newton. Delegate Carani, thank you for your question. We had some discussion at the top of the meeting about a revised distribution of our grant allocation, and it's referred to as a proposed amendment. The first of the exhibits that we attached, Exhibit E was not filled out. In our proposed new exhibits, Exhibit E is providing information on the needs of all of our business units. And you'll see that in a proposed budget with the revised allocation specifically for probation, we're asking that probation gets $1,827,251 for fiscal year 2021. And in addition to that, if you look at what we will be including in a new set of exhibits, our Exhibit E, Probation Services is stating for 2021 that they have an unmet need of $63,108. So that is the basic response to your question. I also wanted to mention that the Probation and Parole Services Program participates in a couple of federal grants that we receive, and that is a couple of grants that are focused on the issue of reentry, and just generally that is targeting probationers and people who have been incarcerated and being released and then returning back to their homes and readjusting to coming back into the community. And so the monitoring that happens with the support of the General Funds grant, with Navajo Nation General Funds, and then also planning, programming, and implementation of a couple of the federal grants that we have on our books. That's my conclusion to answer. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Rhapsody. So with that, committee members, are there any other questions?
Sure.
Honorable Otto.
Are we going to have each of the programs do their presentation to the committee? Because the way I see it right now is that I don't think that's going to happen. And usually we go through each line item. And but again, I worry about the courts out there in the field. I don't know what their needs are, but like I said, this is already something that was agreed upon and a certain amount. And I just would like to just re-echo that we just accept this and move forward with it, because it was agreed upon on July 11th that they decided to get this certain amount, and they determine what each court needs, and they allocated some dollars to there. And I believe that formula, for instance, Tuba City always echoes a maintenance worker related to the new building. So I'm sure that they are addressing that, but something coming from the field is different than coming from the upper management. But in this case, right now, we really can't do anything because they already agreed to these dollars. If we go through each line items here, and we start changing it, that Exhibit A that's recommended to be changed out in the resolution, the numbers are going to change between each district. If we start crawling through each page by page. But I do, I guess, if management decided, let's just approve it and move it forward on this. Number 2 is that have we received any of the settlement dollars that had been slated for the judicial branch in the settlement case related to the 638 contracts? And I guess that's something to look at for future unmet needs for the branch. If the dollars are still on its way, maybe we could look at that, because their unmet need request is about $15 million, and we could slate that settlement to directly to the unmet need request related to the judicial branch for this year. So that is just my recommendation. Recommendation for the first question, for my first statement. The second one, I guess if we receive anything in our system for the related to the settlement fund. Thank you.
Chief Justice.
Madam Chair, I'm going to refer this to Mr. Etchiti. Please, the comment. Thank you. Madam Chair.
additional
Call may be recorded or transcribed.
resources that we might be able to obtain and that you might be able to provide for us through
before we can assist. Ako kwede ya kote. Ako chinanta nadis kitiki Mr. Delegate so. Ye go adesh ni go Ot nabiti ya tiinde. Sa ta go ba ta go. Nza go nadis kit. Ako han so sheet the cases of that they close cases and then they forget. Here okot eda just close cases and we do a follow up. 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Ako okot ego has Ako han so sheet at anage desti do beso sa be ne kha na to cha do la na huin san do he ko ta han sto shin nza go han na go ya ta bismil has anke ko ai do sa de ki nam sta do le to he nda do ki de
Mr. Rhapsody?
Madam Chair? I was just noting that concludes our answer.
Okay, great. Thank you. Committee members, are there any other questions at this time for our judicial branch?
Madam Chair?
Honorable Otto
Oh, thank you for time, and I guess I'm ready to move on this. Just accept their budget the way it is. And like I said, I don't know what the need is at the districts out there. You just heard the peacemaking program supervisor saying he needs more money. So, but this is a decision that has been made upon the upper echelon. So, I'm really hoping that the districts were involved in this discussion. All these programs, really hope. Or maybe they were told, oh, you're only getting this much and allocate this. But whatever happened, this is, I guess, what the judicial branch says. They agreed to that 3-branch chiefs agreement in the amount of $14 million and some odd dollars, and then you have the K count and then the other dollars, which all turn out to be about $19,923,325. So I just would like to say, let's move forward and accept their budget. And the only change that's going to happen is the exhibit change out that's going to happen at this Special Law and Order Committee meeting. And then number 2 is that with no carryovers. Thank you.
Okay, with that, committee members, are there any other questions at this time? Okay, so I don't think there are any other questions. We have all of the documents that have been provided to us by the judicial branch. So with that, we do need a motion to accept the presentation that has been given to us by the Honorable Chief Justice Joanne Jane and her agent, Mr. Edsity. Can I get a motion, committee members?
Second the motion.
Motion made by Honorable Otto So, second by Honorable Eugene So. Okay, let's go ahead and let's go to the vote. Lorraine, can you go ahead and take care of the vote at this time? It's okay, Lorraine. I'll go ahead and proceed to the vote. Honorable Vince James, how do you vote? Honorable Eugene So, how do you vote?
Green.
Honorable So votes green. Honorable Otto So? Honorable Otto So votes green. Honorable Edmund Yazzie? Honorable Vince James?
Delegate James votes green.
Honorable James votes green. Honorable Edmund Yazzie? Okay, with that, committee members, we do have 3 in favor, 0 opposed, 2 not voting. One of the people not voting is the chair. So with that, Honorable Chief Justice Jane, we do accept the presentation that you provided to this body today. We thank you for your time. You're excused.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee,
Okay, committee members, just to be clear, we are done for the day. We do have the Division of Public Safety that will be presenting to us tomorrow. And I believe that Ms. Spencer has sent out the budget schedule for this week. So I think at this, I can't remember. Ron, are you still on the line?
Yes, I'm still on the line.
So do we take a recess at this time, or do we adjourn for the day and then start back all over again tomorrow? I don't recall.
Yeah, as Dana pointed out, I think you're doing your reviews for reports, and I think I would just simply proceed tomorrow with the same process that you're doing now.
Okay, so do we recess or do we adjourn?
Oh, I apologize. Yeah, you recess. Just go ahead and just recess.
Okay, so with that, committee members, we are, I guess we're going to go ahead and go into a recess until tomorrow. Ron, do we need to take a vote for a recess, or is that does the chair just call
I just go ahead and just do a motion and a second for recess. And I did notice that you do have your agenda, of course, that you adopted, so that would be the purpose of the recess. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, with that, committee members, I do need a motion to recess and a second.
Motion to adjourn. Motion to recess.
Motion to recess made by Honorable Vince James. Can I get a second?
Okay. Oh.
Second made by Honorable Otto So. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and proceed forward to the vote. Honorable Vince James, how do you vote?
Delegate James votes green.
Honorable James votes green. Honorable Otto So. Honorable So votes green. Honorable Eugene So.
Green.
Honorable So votes green. Honorable Edmund Yazzie. Honorable Edmund Yazzie. Okay, with that, committee members, we do have 3 in favor, 0 opposed, 2 not voting, 1 is the chair. We are at 11:29. We call the recess, and we will be convening tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Thank you.
Business unit was set up for the Oak Springs, Pine Springs Veterans Park. This is money that is being held in trust for that chapter for that project. So it is simply recorded on here to make sure that it does not disappear crossing into fiscal years. At this time, that concludes my summary of the NNVA budget for fiscal year 21, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Committee members? Committee members, do you have any questions?
Chair Wanika.
Oh, Satilit, Honorable Edison Wanika.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, members of the committee, and also the presenter. My concern has to do with for this fiscal year, there's no operating funds for the entire year, and at the same time, there's changing the 5 business units. I mean, changing it from 110 business units to 5 business units. As far as operating funds, would you need more? You said you was going to request unmet needs as far as the need for operating funds. Because you're going to establish all the process at the agency level. Would you need more staff at the agency level if you do that? That's my question. And then also you mentioned that you're just under 600,000 carryover, and you said you're going to use a lot of that for the unmet needs. Would that be sufficient amount of the carryover, or would you need additional funding as far as operating funds? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, sir. And if I could hear the first part of your question correctly, the budget form 3 has all of the additional personnel that we would need, both at the central agency, at the central administration and at the 5 agencies. There would not be an additional personnel requirement beyond what is listed on the budget form 3. To answer the second part of your question, the carryover funds would 100% cover our anticipated unmet needs. That does assume that our estimates on our carryover are correct at just under 600,000, and that our budget form numbers, form 1 numbers are also correct, showing that we would be deficient $465,327. We would not require additional appropriation beyond our FY20 carryover. That is our assessment at this point. Thank you, sir.
Committee members, any follow-up questions?
Chair, Dr. Paul Begay.
Vote. Say, Paul Begay, go ahead.
Good morning. Good morning, SC members. Thank you, Mr. Z, for the presentation. I realize that this is a yearly budget thing. As the director of the Veterans Administration, do you have a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan in place, or anything like that, some type of plan, long-range plan? That would be my question. Thank you.
Sir, I apologize if I'm not hearing the question correctly. On my end, you were slightly broken, so please correct me if I'm off the mark here. Right now, our 5-year plan is still being developed. We believe that with these personnel changes that we are requesting and implementing based on the budget form 3, that should be sufficient at this time to adequately provide services to our veterans. Obviously, only time is going to tell, The effectiveness of the implementation, how soon can we get these positions filled, how soon can we get them trained and make sure that they're being properly supervised to be providing these services to the veterans that our veteran population deserves. I acknowledge that there's a lot of retraining that is required of some of the existing staff to bring them more up to par. And I think that reflects in our accurate reporting on our performance criteria. It shows that we are falling very far of the mark. So right now we are taking it 1 year at a time, but the hope is that this personnel reorganization will be sufficient to get us through the next 5 years. Thank you, sir.
Chair Delgado, go ahead. Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee members. The question that I have right now for you, Mr. Zillani, is we're still working on the new plan of operations that hasn't been approved yet, and the housing also. And so does the budget that we're working on now reflect in the new plan of operations that we still have to get approved? With all the changes that's on the budget that we're working on today? Well, is that reflected in the new plan of operation as well as the housing? That's my question, sir.
Thank you, sir. And I think that question is very on point. These new personnel positions are the exact same positions that were recommended in, I believe it was 41-20, the modification to the Veterans Administration Plan of Operation that went through 5-day comment period in February and that was taken for action by this committee May, I believe it was, and was voted down. Since then, I have not heard any feedback from any of the committee members, to include yourself, sir, as the sponsor for that legislation, on recommended changes for that plan of operation. So it remains our hope that when this committee does take for action again the revisions to the plan of operation, that they will go through as we have recommended, specifically for the personnel. When it comes to the housing program, and thank you, sir, for bringing that up, there are 3 positions that we are omitting out of the general fund staff position from the Form 3. 2 of those positions were being general fund funded for the housing program. There was a housing supervisor and a senior housing specialist. If the revisions, legislative changes for CS 4813 go through, that program will fund the positions that administer the housing program. So that would bring back the program supervisor 1 position, the senior housing specialist position, and 5 housing specialist positions, 1 for each agency. Right now, only the senior housing specialist position is occupied. And if that legislation amendment does not make it before the end of this fiscal year, that 1 individual would be furloughed until either the program legislation funds his position again, or additional appropriations are made for general fund to account for the housing program positions. But it is our position right now that while there is a housing program, staff administrating that program should be paid from that program. And if the program ends, those positions go away. I hope that answers your question, sir. Thank you.
Follow-up? Chair, yes, I did. That does answer my question. And there's 2 legislations that are resubmitted for the plan of operation as well as the housing. I did not make any changes to it yet, and when they come out, I guess we can remodify them or make any changes necessary as we move to approve them. But right as of this day, I haven't made any changes, but everything that was submitted will reflect the new budget at this point. So I'm hoping those things are going to come out this week. I was told they were going to be worked over on the weekend, but I haven't seen or heard anything yet that they're ready yet. So I'm check on that later on here, this afternoon. Thank you, Chair.
Committee members, anybody else have a question?
So this is Delegate Crotty with the question.
Oh, yeah, Shama, thank you for joining the call. You may go ahead. Pose your question.
Shiyaj, Chairman So, Delegate, HES Committee, and staff with Mr. Z from the Veterans Affairs. In reviewing the budget and looking at how this will affect not only all of Navajo Nation veterans across four boundaries and beyond, I'm going to raise a concern because I do see where some of the programs are reverting back to how funding was allocated in the past. In particular, the consolidating all of the chapter veterans allocation and pulling that into the agency level. That's actually how this program used to function. And what the former head on active.
Thank you.
Am I clear? On the 22nd council, what they did was decentralize that funding because it was clear that veterans were being left out. And so without a Navajo Nation clear veteran count, it was a challenge receiving the same amount of service. And so in this presentation, it's not clear on why there's this consolidation. I did hear that some chapters are not spending, some chapter veterans organizations are not expending all of their dollars. And what was very concerning is that some chapter veterans organizations are overexpending. And I'm not really sure how a program or a budget line item can be overexpended. And so that goes back to the personnel and the administration. So I'll need that to be answered. And I would request, and I just went on the website, I would request a breakdown of Northern Agency. At this time, I feel comfortable in stating that Northern Agency veterans were not aware of this budget. And so I'd like to pull those numbers, requesting administration to pull those numbers on behalf of our Northern Agency veterans, so we could look at those numbers. And I would be ready at Budget and Finance to make an amendment to make would have the services that this funding allocates to them. So I'd like those two questions to be answered. How does a veteran chapter line item, how is the over expenditure possible with the administration oversight, and then the request for the Northern Agency breakdown. Thank you, and I do have a few more questions.
Thank you. Mr. Swerling.
To start answering that question, at the beginning of my tenure as the acting director, I had requested of all 110 chapter veterans organizations to provide me with a veteran count. 14 chapters responded. Most of those chapters came from Eastern Agency. So without any recourse to compare numbers from the agencies, I was left to pull files of individual veterans at the agency offices. Based on physically counting hard copy records of the veterans that are registered with each agency, Chin Lee had a total of 1,284 veterans, surviving spouses, and Gold Star mothers. That made up 10.37%. Crown Point, 2,331. That made 18.82% of the total veteran population. Fort Defiance, 4,138, 33.41%. Shiprock, 2,257. That made 18.22%. And Cuba City had 2,375 for a total of 19.18%. That gives the entire Navajo Nation right now, based on our hard copy veteran files, 12,385 total veterans, surviving spouses, and Gold Star mothers. And when all of the existing legislation says equal distribution, when we don't have accurate counts of which veterans are in which chapters, the only number we can work with is based on the agency. So when we break down Shiprock agencies, 18.22% of the total $4,213,900 for FY21, that makes Shiprock's fair share allocation as an agency $767,927. Next fiscal year, FY22, if we are able to accurately reconcile where our veteran population is distributed, we can entertain going back down to the 110 chapter distributions. But right now, this is the only thing that we can see to make it more fair for every veteran, Gold Star mother, and surviving spouse to have equal opportunity to be able to apply for financial assistance benefits. It goes back to, like I was briefly saying, when a chapter has a large allocation and can only expend 8%, the rest of that money under the 110 chapter distribution carries over to that same chapter. And over the last couple of years, that chapter has built up over $100,000 worth of trust fund money that they cannot use. And so consolidating all of the 110 different business units into 5, take all of this carryover money from the current fiscal year and maintain it within the agency, and it becomes available to the entire veteran population within that agency. And it is our sincere hope that it makes it more available to the veteran population at large to have better access to those benefits. When it comes to having an agency, a chapter overexpend, I have no answer on that one. We are supposed to have several ledgers. The chapters were supposed to have ledgers. We were supposed to be doing reconciliation between the agencies and the chapters to ensure both ends of the equation were using the same numbers. When we look at regular spending under general fund, accounts payable does not let us expend funds from an account that has an insufficient balance. I would think that that same logic applies to the trust fund. So when a chapter overexpends, I don't know where that error lies. It may be that there were multiple requests processed at the exact same time when there was a sufficient balance for any one of those requests. But when they were all processed, it moves a chapter into the negative. That's the only conclusion that I can come to on that one. I hope that answers your question, ma'am.
Honorable Roddy, do you have follow-up?
Thank you, Chairman. So I do. Actually, I think we need to be clear on how the money is administered. The veteran prep money is administered. We have tried in the past that the chapters could have the opportunity to administer funding. Is that what I'm hearing? That chapters are administrating the funds? I would need clarification, Chair, so that I could ask my follow-up question. Thank you.
Mr. Schwerlein.
The answer is no chapter is directly administrating the funds. The chapter veterans organizations have been doing budgets for the annual appropriations that were going to that chapter. And then they would distribute their funds into which sub-accounts they wanted that funding to be distributed to. And then the agency office would manage the budget transfer requests signed by me, reviewed by the Office of the President and Vice President, and executed by the Office of Management and Budget. So at this time, none of the chapters themselves are administrating any portion of the Veterans Trust Fund.
Yes, thank you for that clarification, Chair. If I cut out, please let me know. I don't know what's going on with my service, but I apologize because Chairman and head committee members, when there's an issue with over expenditure of the veterans' dollars, that lies with the Veterans Administration, and so I will request that the division or the director provide information on those over expenditures occurred and how going to be that if a chapter has a pot of money that's available, then how is the department or the program providing technical assistance to that chapter veterans organization to expend those dollars? I'm not sure in terms of what chapter veteran organizations are having those challenges, and that's why I believe we need to see those documents in terms of what is the current funding, how much has been carried over, and more importantly, who has overspended. I also would like the initial request for the breakdown of Northern Agency. I understand and recognize each veteran agency organization may have a different interpretation and opinion. And so I would like to bring this information back to Northern Agency veterans, my district in particular, so that they understand what's occurring and that I could get some guidance in terms of how their funding is being, I don't want to say, well, it is being redistributed. If it goes back to the agency, for me, that's problematic. Do you think it's to fix that administratively? Nation veterans get that count, and my hope would be that the President and Vice President help, and that we will have an accurate number of Navajo veterans. Thank you.
Shema, Ms. Crowdy, we lost contact.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chair. I think the question was who's responsible for the Navajo Nation veterans count? Thank you. I'll go back up here.
Mr. Schwerlein.
The Veterans Administration is responsible for the veterans count. Ultimately, that falls on me. There has been discussion within the executive branch of trying to use the 2020 census information to gather numbers on the veteran population. Based on the reports that I've heard from the census so far, we have, I think it was less than 10% of the Navajo veteran population is responding to the census. And if we're getting numbers that are that low, the census will not be an accurate count for the Navajo veteran population. The only option that I can see to reconcile our files is input from the chapter veterans organizations. And I'm not saying this applies to the chapters within your district or specifically chapters within Shiprock, but my staff and I have seen, and I'm sure some of you as well have seen, that there are divisions within the veteran population within chapters, that depending on who is running that chapter veterans organization, certain veterans will have nothing to do with the group. And when we try to find out how many veterans are in there, we have reason to believe within some of our chapters that those numbers will be suspect, that they may not include as many veterans as there are within that chapter, and that will impact the amount of funding that goes to that chapter. When we take a look at what is currently sitting in Shiprock Agency's trust fund balance for the agency as a whole, we're sitting at $73,484. In FY19, the trust fund carried over $1.6 million in unspent funds. Based on the numbers we have from Shiprock, we can conservatively estimate that the entirety of the trust fund is going to carry over at least $750,000 for FY20. So it is our hope that by redistributing the funds at the agency and not down to the chapter level, that more of those funds will be able to be expended so there's less carryover and we're assisting more veterans. With the agencies managing the trust fund balances in each of the different assistance accounts, emergency, hardship, energy, housing, home improvement, stipends, supplies, catering, the agency office is going to be able to monitor the balances allocated within each agency. And we're going to be doing fewer budget transfer requests. And hopefully this will lighten the load on the Office of Management and Budget, and it will allow those budget transfers to occur more quickly to make sure that the veterans always have that assistance that they need. Hope that answers your question, ma'am. Thank you.
Mr. Swirline, in one of your responses, you stated that none of the chapters handle their veteran fund. And so it's the program's responsibility. On the flip side of your answer. So again, how does over expenditure occur? And in regard to the chapters that have low enrollment monies or enrollment numbers, has there been outreach by the agency staff? Has there been newsletter, public service announcement, those types of outreach to occur so that, you know, that dilemma that you're saying is depending on who's at the chapter organization, the leadership may encourage or discourage attendance or even participation. Has the agency staff done outreach? The other part, I guess, is I'll wait for your answer.
To the first part of your question, sir, regarding over expenditure, yes. The first line of defense is the agency office. The agencies should and are supposed to have accurate accounting of where those trust fund dollars are. They are supposed to not allow over expenditure. That is the job of an account maintenance specialist, to maintain those accounts, to make sure that before they have a request go through for processing, that there is sufficient funding in that account. One item contributing to this that we have found with over expenditures or negative balances in accounts, not necessarily because of over expenditures, is because of the overload of work at the Office of Management and Budget. When we submit a budget transfer, we hope that they are able to process it in a timely fashion. We know from experience that sometimes along the lines, those budget transfers don't always make it onto the desk of the individual who is going to execute those transfers. And so a budget transfer is duplicated and resubmitted. And it has happened where both of those budget transfer requests, identical requests for the same chapter, are both processed. And somehow that ends up with a negative balance. And it all comes back to, like I said, it depends on the order in which things are processed. If two duplicate transactions are happening at the same time, independently, each one may be a valid transaction, but together they invalidate each other. So when they're put into the system, they're expected to be good, but by the time they both process, that's where it creates a problem. And that's where the Veterans Administration has to work better with the Office of Management and Budget to figure out ways to avoid having that happen. And perhaps if the solution is a legally viable solution, perhaps a trial basis for one fiscal year, the Veterans Administration is permitted to execute those budget transfers with the Office of Management and Budget providing oversight on our actions so that they can ensure that we are not executing budget transfers that are in violation of the Budget Instruction Manual and instructions passed by the Budget and Finance Committee. As to the second part of your question, sir, staff outreach, this is one of the things that will be addressed by additional personnel. Right now, the sheer volume of requests and the time that it takes to process financial assistance requests does not allow for much additional time for the staff to do anything other than process those requests. The current staff that we are supposed to have under the currently authorized plan of operation and the budgeted positions, we do not have all of our positions filled at each of the agency offices. Right now, the Eastern Agency Office is short one person, which means they only have 2 working in that office. Shiprock is now short 2 staff members. They only have 1 working in that office. Fort Defiance now has 3 staff members, as does Tuba City and Chinle. So they are working on making sure their process is a little bit more refined so that they can have more time to do more community outreach. But over the last several months, with the COVID pandemic, the traditional community outreach of attending chapter veterans organization meetings has been non-existent. Since the meetings have not been being conducted, it makes it difficult for the staff to actually attend a non-existent meeting. But moving forward, what we would like to be able to do are the newsletters, are the radio announcements. And we do have plans right now and revisions in the works of updating the administration's webpage so that our newsletters and our director updates and agency updates will be available to at least a percentage of the veteran population. There won't be any one method that we can implement to ensure that community outreach hits every single veteran out there. The best that we can do is the tools that are at our disposal. And communication face-to-face, social media platforms, web-based platforms. Right now, that is where the Navajo Nation is moving but we also have to rely on those veterans who have that access to pass that information to the veterans who don't. So it's something that it's a revolution that is happening within the veteran population. More people are starting to get the information, and other people are starting to ask the correct questions to be able to engage those conversations so that those outreach efforts are more successful. So even if we do maintain that we are going to be doing veteran drives, registration drives, then it does fall onto the individual veteran, and they would have to contact the agency office. And unless they disclose their chapters, then we would only have them registered as the agency veteran. Hence the reason why we're going back to the agency distributions of those funds. I hope that addresses your question, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Schwerlein, on at the agency level, how is your book set up to keep track of the chapter allocation?
The books that we use are the FMIS system. It's the same system that the Office of the Controller is using and that the Office of Management and Budget is using. When we pull up any given chapter's allotment, that shows the money that is in that account at that point in time. It does not show us requests that are in the pipeline for processing by accounts payable. It does not show us pending budget transfer requests. So it falls on internal record keeping to make sure that pending requests are not going to take any of those accounts into the negative. That pending budget transfer requests will do the same. They will not take an account into the negative. And this is one thing that the Office of Management and Budget has been very exceptional at correcting us on, is by the time we are able to get them a budget transfer request, the amounts that we put on our paperwork as reflected in that account are no longer valid, meaning that there have been veterans assistance checks that have been issued and drawn on those accounts. So the Office of Management and Budget will not process a budget transfer that indicates this account will go into the negative. They kick those back and they ask us for a revision. So it falls on the accuracy of FMIS, which does have the time lag, and the accurate record keeping of the account maintenance specialist at each of the 5 agencies. And if those records are not consistently reconciled, that's where we start running into over expenditures. But those are, like I said, those are supposed to be caught by both the Office of Management and Budget and accounts payable. I think, and this is my opinion, that the final check in the system is accounts payable. They are the ones that issue the check, and that is the final point that can draw an account into the negative. So if there is a break in the system somewhere where we have processed a assistance application as clear to be paid and accounts payable processes it with insufficient funds being in that account, that's where the system is broken. But I cannot say that the fault lies solely with either accounts payable, with Office of Management and Budget, or with my staff. Primarily, yes, with my staff. But there are checks and balances in the system that should be catching some of these overdrafts. Thank you, sir.
Okay, follow-up question. Ms. Lowell, Mr. Willie, Mr. Francis. What we have before us is the 2021 budget. That will just be business units. What happens to the chapter allocations that have those other business units? And those are tied to last year's budget going forward. Does all of that revert back to the Veterans Trust Fund as a whole? Or is those balances going to, in addition to this year's request, are those going to go into the agencies or budget? The remaining balances from the chapter's allocation, what happens to that? That's in FY 2019-20 budget. And then this budget request now is new monies that will be allocated to 5 business units. So that's my question. Hello, hello.
We heard you. Sir, this is Director Zorlan. Was that question directed at me or OOC and OMB?
OOC and OMB, and even Legislative Council.
Sir, this is Kristen. I can say with all certainty, I do not know the answer to that question. That is a technical question for OOC and OMB. And I'm not sure they're on the line anymore, so perhaps we can ask them to pop back on because there's a question. Sure.
Sir, this is Director Zorlan. I can provide an answer to that question.
I didn't ask you, I asked OOC and OMB. Ms. Martinez, can you get Mr. Willie and Mr. Francis back on the line?
Yes, sir. Hello? Can you hear me? This is Robert Willie.
Okay, Mr. Willie. Mr. Francis, is he on the line yet?
Hello?
This is Emmett Francis. Okay, both of you, Mr. Francis and Mr. Willie. I have a question. Of the 110 business units that are tied to FY 19 and 20, those dollar amounts in that trust fund, what happens to them on September 30th? Are they maintained? Or will they be transferred into the 5 agency business unit numbers?
Okay, this is Emmett Francis.
Go ahead.
Those balances that are still in FY19 budget, they have not been transferred over into FY20. I had sent out instructions several months ago on how to do that without having to do it by budget revision requests. I even gave him an outline and instructions on how to do that. I never got any answer back, and the only one that did finally submit to transfer the FY19 balances into FY20 is Eastern Navajo Agency. And she did it the way I instructed the Veterans Program to do it, where you don't have to submit a budget transfer request. If you do that, it may have to go to Oversight Committee before the carryover is done. Now, that will still sit in the Chapter 110 budgets for FY20 if that carryover is transferred over. Now, from 20 to 21, there will be a problem because the money will be still tied to the business unit of the Navajo Nation chapters. And probably the only way that those funds can be transferred into another business unit that would be not a chapter business unit is for approval by the Oversight Committee to transfer those funds from 110 chapters into one business unit at the agency level. It would have to have approval from the Oversight Committee, I believe. So it's going from a different business unit into another business unit. That's usually the way the budget instruction manual reads, is that when it goes from one business unit that is different into another business unit that is different, then Oversight Committee has to approve it. If it goes from the same business unit into the same business unit, then all you need is a budget revision request to transfer those funds over. And that's the way, again, that's the way the budget instruction manual reads, and so on. So that would be my answer. I don't know about controllers. I think I asked them the question some time ago on how to do that before. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, this is Robert Willie.
Go ahead, Mr. Willie.
Okay, well, when we calculate the carryovers, the carryovers actually go into the same business unit. So each chapter would be calculated, and those are the numbers that we would send to Office of Management and Budget. And from there, Mr. Francis did explain the process. So I'm hoping that this does clarify what you were asking, sir. If you have more questions, please feel free to ask away. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, do you have any follow-up questions?
Chair Wanika?
Go ahead, Tatila, Honorable Wanika.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. I am concerned about the change also because one of my chapters runs out of money within just a few months of the new fiscal year. So I know there's been a request as far as distribution of funds to be based on the veterans count, but it's taken a while, and now there's a change. I don't know if there was consent from the chapter organizations, veterans organizations. I remember last year we had a problem with Dodie. They went ahead and took funds from the agencies without the consent of the agency managers. It became a problem. And I feel this might become a problem too. So I think we need to ask more questions. So for that reason, I'm going to motion to table this and revisit this on Thursday. Because I think redistribution of the chapter trust fund might become an issue. If we don't make a decision, that will be, as far as the chapters are concerned, I think we need to have more discussion on this, Chair. Thank you.
Committee, I'll recognize that motion to table and revisit on Thursday. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second, Delegate Slater. Second by Delegate Slater. Tabling motion has no debate. So I'll call for the question. Mr. Mose.
Yes, sir. Honorable Paul Begay Jr. Green. Honorable Paul Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Paul Russell Slater.
Delegate Slater, green.
Honorable Paul Russell Slater votes green. Honorable Pernell Halona. Honorable Pernell Halona. Honorable Charlene So.
I vote green.
Honorable Charlene So votes green. Honorable Edison J. Wanika.
Green.
Honorable Edison J. Wanika votes green. Last call, Honorable Pernell Halona.
Halona votes green. I also want to, trying to ask a question about that. If we table it till Thursday, the next round, who's going to be working on that, directing to work on that to give us a good answer of what needs to happen by that same day? With that, I'll vote green.
Honorable Pernell Halona votes green. Chair, you have a vote of 5 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mose. So, vote of 5 in favor, 0 opposed. Chair not voting. This legislation will be brought back to the table on Thursday. On when we revisit all the budgets too. Thank you, committee members. In the meantime, we'll get further clarification on what will happen to the chapter allocations that are existing, pre-existing. Committee members. With that, Ms. Martinez, what is the next item on our agenda for today?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to unmute. We have Division of Social Services at 1 o'clock. Mr. Chair.
Okay, committee, what we'll do is take a 30-minute break and then we'll all call back in. So I'll call for a recess, committee members.
Chair, I'll make the motion to recess for 30 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Did we adjourn?
We have,
Wait, no, wait, wait. We're gonna get another meeting for it.
okay, we have a motion to recess. Okay, we'll go into recess.
The adjournment?
What's that? Oh, yes, excuse me, I'm sorry. We're done with this particular agenda. I'm sorry, committee members. Too many things rolling right now.
Chair, when you cut.
Yes. Go ahead,
Chair,
Mr. Lester.
we have an agenda for the veterans, and we have totally new agenda for
social service. Does that mean we adjourn this one and then reconvene again at 1 o'clock? Or does it mean
Yes, at, if we could, get that motion to adjourn,
Motion to
recess-
adjourn, Helena.
Motion to adjourn by Helena. Who's second?
Second, Junica.
Okay, motion and a second to adjourn. Thank you, committee members for pointing it out, and even staff for pointing that out.
Please get a vote.
Yes, roll call vote, please.
Honorable Paul Begay Jr. Honorable Paul Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Carl Russell Slater. Honorable Carl Russell Slater. Honorable Pernell Helona. One votes green. Honorable Pernell Helona votes green. Honorable Sergeant So.
I vote green.
Honorable Sergeant So votes green. Honorable Edson J. Unica. Honorable Edson J. Unica votes green. Chair, a vote of 4 in favor, 0 opposed. At 12:29. Lunchtime.
We are adjourned. Call back in at 1. Thank you.
Oh, get on, yeah. Oh, stop.